Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'll just wait another little bit. Hi, Yogi. Hi, Judy. Hi, Suzanne. Hi, Susan. This is Kathy Jo's Fingers Yogi. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead with the project. Today's project is a bright and cheery bloom card. Before I start, I'd like to say Happy National Craft Month. I hope you guys have all been crafting away in your craft rooms and in your crafty spots, making beautiful projects. So before we get into too much detail on the cards, I would just like to point everyone to the Quietfire Creations page. This is a page where the Quietfire designers, they share all their crafty projects using beautiful Suzanne Cannon designed product. And then we also have the Quietfire Digital. The digital is the crafty blog spot where the designers share their projects using Quietfire Design electronic digital files. And these digital files can be purchased at the Silhouette store and also on Quietfire Designs. Also, there's the Elizabeth Craft Designs blog. On this blog is where designers share their projects using Elizabeth Craft design dies designed by Suzanne Cannon, and also stamps. And then we also have the Quietfire Design page where everyone is at right now, and I appreciate you all coming here to see the Facebook Live. And then we have the Suzanne Cannon fan page. And the fan page is a great little site where all fans of Suzanne Cannon go for even more inspiration. They can share their crafty projects. We also have the Quietfire Design newsletter. This newsletter, it's a great little newsletter that Suzanne sends out to share new products, to talk about classes, to share projects that you might have missed on social media, and to also talk about sales. And we also have a new section on the Quietfire Design store. It's called Leathers Live. And on Leathers Live is where you can find all the product that's been used on this Facebook Live and on previous Facebook Lives. So it's a great little spot to quickly find prior product used. And if you happen to miss a week, or if you wanted to go back and see a technique that we might have shared with you on a Facebook Live, you can also check out the previous videos on YouTube. So if you notice, these aren't Suzanne's hands, these are Kathy Jo's hands. Usually I'm the one that's typing all the links and stuff in the comments and saying hi to everyone. But Suzanne right now is in Hawaii soaking up some sun, so I said I'd do Facebook Live for the next 2 weeks. Instead, my awesome husband, Greg, is at the laptop downstairs, and he's doing all the links. So I really want to say thank you so much for doing that. And in short, Greg, you are the best husband ever. Thank you, Greg, for doing all the links. I really appreciate it. So, like I said, we're doing these sweet little bloom cards today. And what I like about these bloom cards is that you can create a whole bunch of these backgrounds, and you can put a lot of Suzanne's different stamps and smaller dies too inside the flower centers. So the card, this first card here, is the one that I created for my blog post on Quietfire Creations on Monday, and it used the Just Living Is Not Enough stamp. So the project today, I'm going to use another stamp from a different collection, and this one is from the this is the Those Who Find a Faithful Friend stamp, and this is from the Always Be My Friend collection. Now this is a 3 stamp collection. This is probably one of my favorite sets. So it has this stamp in it. It also has I love that you will always be my friend, and here's a sample of that card, of a card using that stamp. And then there's also the You Are My Sunshine stamp, and that is a sweet stamp too. So I just wanted to show some different samples of cards that I created using other stamps, or the 3 stamps from that set. This is a stamp set that, it's a sweet little stamp set, just like many of Suzanne's other stamps and stamp sets, and it gets a lot of use from me. What you'll also need for today's project is you'll need some water-soluble inks. I'm using the New Harmony inks from Spectrum Noir. I'm using Fuchsia and Honey Pot. If you find that the Honey Pot is too dark for you, there's also Lemon Tonic. That one's a really good one. And since we're stamping on vellum, a good stamp pad to use on that is the Stays On. It's the jet black, and that's what I used on my vellum. So talking about vellum, you'll also need some paper for this project. I'm using craft cardstock for my card base. I'm using white cardstock just for the frame behind the image. And then you're going to need some water cardstock. I'm using the Aqua paper from Spectrum Noir. It's a really good paper. And then I'm also using vellum. I used the white vellum because I found that when I tried a different color, because I thought maybe a yellow might look good there, and then when I tried different colors for the background, I thought different colors might work, but it just kind of took away from the image, and so the white vellum works really well with this. So after the paper, you're going to need some adhesive. You can use the mini or the micro glue dots to adhere the vellum onto the paper. I'm out of that, so I used tacky glue. You also need some good tape to put behind the aqua paper, because I find with watercolor paper you want to have a lot of tack with it, so I used a stronger tape. Elizabeth Craft Designs also makes a good tape too, but I didn't have any of that available. And then I used a smaller tape to secure my ribbon onto the card front. And talking about that, you're going to need some seam binding because we're going to dye our ribbon to match the card. I picked this up off of eBay, 50 yards. I keep it on my desk, and I'm constantly dyeing different ribbons. It makes life very simple, and you don't have to buy as much ribbon. With adhesive, you're also going to need some foam squares. This is going to lift the card front off of the card base. And Crafter's Companion make a really good and sticky foam tape. I found that this one's my favorite so far. Some other things that you'll need is some brushes. I'm using the flat brushes for mine. I'm using a wider one and a thinner one. I'm using the thinner one for the yellow on the petals. I like to keep two handy so this way I'm not constantly cleaning my brushes. You're going to need a craft mat and course, some water unless you're using a water brush, some good tweezers, scissors, and some gems. The gems are going to go in the corner of the vellum, and not only does this add a little bit of extra to your card, but it's also going to hide the glue dots that you have underneath the vellum. A stamping platform is very helpful, and you're going to want something to do a circle with. I'm using a spool of ribbon to make the circle for the inside of my flower. So with that, let's go ahead and start the card. So I started with a 5x5 piece of watercolor paper, and I have a scrap piece of paper off to the side. And what I want to do is I want to have it so that my flower is offset just a little bit. And the reason why I want to do this is so that you can see the petals. And also it adds a little bit of something extra to the card. Instead of having it centered, it's just interesting to have it offset a little bit. So I want to have it right around this area here. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to put my ribbon spool right in that area. And I found with this particular ribbon spool, it was perfect because I know too that my stamp fits right in the center of it. So that worked out really well. So I'm going to take my honey pot. I'm just going to stamp it directly onto my mat. We're going to end up using a lot of the ink, so I dabbed it on quite a few times. And so I'm taking my brush and I'm just doing a light bit of water into this. I'm just going to test it onto this paper just to make sure that it's not too dark when I create the circle. Oops, let's see, somewhere right around there. And I'm just going to go around this just ever so lightly. There we go. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill this in with the yellow. There we go. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where I want my petals to be. Now you can go with a whole bunch of petals, you can go with a small amount of petals, you can go with fat petals, thin petals. And what I've done is I've created a few samples here. So with this one I went with a little bit more water on my brushes, and I kept the petals really close together, and I did put a lot of ink on that too, so it's nice and bold and has nice thick petals. And then I tried it again with a little bit more water, but less ink, and I made my petals thinner. Then I also went with a gold paste in the center just to see how that looked. And then with this one, I went with more ink but less water, and I made the brush strokes, or I made my petals a little bit thinner so I saw more white and you could see the brush strokes more. And yeah, so if you just want to play around with what you want to have out of your card, that might be a great idea too, because there's many different options when you're playing with this. And so when I created my petals, I think I made 7 on mine, right around 7. So you just start from the center and you work your way out. Because this is basically going to be where your petals are. It doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to paint the paint over that. Oops, looks like I'm short a petal, but it's okay. So I'm just going to set the yellow aside, and next I'm going to go with the fuchsia. And again, I'm going to dab a lot of this onto my pad. Isn't that a beautiful color? So right now what I'm doing is I'm just trying to define the outside of my petals. I'm not going inside yet unless I kept my petals close together. You kind of want to arc it when you create it. And I'm just going to put a little bit of one there too. Oops. So now I'm going to take a little bit of water and just go back over that. So it's already starting to blend in with the yellow just a little bit. Cover that one again. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my yellow, because what I want to do is I want to create a pretty, the color's not salmon, coral. So this is a little bit of coral with some pink highlights in it. Oops. Oh, don't you just love that color? So pretty. So I'm going to fix my line here. And what I'm doing is now I'm just going to use this color to create a center here with some nice colors along the edge. Kind of blend that in a little bit more too. So you can see with this one I made it a little bit more watery. I am kind of rushing through this right now. Oh, and I got some ink on there. And so that's my flower. I'm just going to set that aside for a second. And so now I want to dye my seam binding. And I'm a little low on the yellow. And I've used quite a bit of the pink. So I'm just going to kind of dab that again. Now if you have a spritzer, this would be a great time to use it. I don't know if my spritzer is handy, so I am just going to take a water brush and just kind of put that in there. And I'm going to take my seam binding I need enough to wrap around the front of it and to also create my bow. So I'm just going to kind of mush it all in together. And it's just going to soak up all that pretty ink. And I put too much water in there, but it's still a nice, that's a pretty color. I love the colors in there. So, ink, you know it's a good time in the craft room when your fingers are covered in ink. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dry this for a bit. I'm using my heat tool. If you have a spot to just hang it and let it dry in the air too, that's fine. I just don't want to get things too inky. So if you like your ribbon crinkly, you can also just kind of ball that up and then dry it that way. So I'm going to let this just hang dry for a second, and isn't that cool the way it just matches so well? Okay, so now, let me wipe my hands again. So now I'm going to go over this one more time, my mat. I'm a messy crafter, and I find I get ink and everything else everywhere. And so I just kind of wipe that off because I don't want to get any more ink on my card, even though I did there. And so I'm going to use, like I said, those who have found a faithful friend. I'm going to put it in the center there. So I've got my stamp platform. I already have this set up. I'm taking a piece of vellum, and this vellum, I cut it, as you can see, smaller than the card front. And I'm going to take a dry flower. I'll use this one from yesterday. So I'm going to line this up. There's a little bit of a gap there all around it. What I did for my vellum was I cut it to 4 3/4 to, I think it was 3 1/2. And yeah, I'm going to put my stamp right there. So I already, like I said, I already lined it up earlier. I'm just going to check to make sure it's where I want it. And yep. And you might want to, depending on where the center of your flower is, you might want to have your stamp just a little bit up, because again, we're going to put a ribbon around it. So I think that's a good location. And I'm just going to use my Stays On ink. Oops, dab that on there. Whoops, and it's got the plastic on it. That would not have turned out very well. Okay. Just going to stamp that on. Give it a nice press. I'm going to make sure I have that flourish there on the bottom. Oops, and that moved. I may not have inked it very well. Okay, I will just use the other piece I already did. So I'm afraid I might have moved that. Okay. So So we've got it stamped. The front of our card is ready. And so next we want to mount the vellum to the card front. And this is where those micro dots from glue dots would work out well, but like I said, I'm out of those, so I'm using a fine point tacky glue on my corners. And so I want to put the gems evenly in each of the corners. So I'm just putting a little dot. Let's see, I gotta stand up for this. Okay. So I want to make sure it's even. That looks pretty good. Just kind of gently smooth it out. Very pretty. Okay, so next I'm going to use the really good tape. And in this case, I'm using my extra thick tape or extra wide tape. Oh, hi Judy Jenkins. I'm staying up so now I can see the top of my phone. Hi Suzanne, thanks for popping in on your vacation. Okay, so the back is ready, and I'm going to mount this on white card stock, and the white card stock, this is 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. Hi Sherry. Okay, so I've got my tails on, and I'm just making sure that everything is centered. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to put my seam binding that I just dyed on there, and the one that I made is still drying, so I had one prepped already. And so I want it right around there. So I'm going to use my thinner tape. I know, Sherry, dyed seam binding is awesome. You totally rock it. Sherry is the master of seam binding and making just the best bows. Yep. Okay, that's a little uneven there. Okay, so now I've got to do the foam tape, and like I said, I'm going to use the Crafter's Companion. Oops, that's small, so I'll put that one in the center. So I found when I bought rolls of foam tape that I was always using liquid adhesive with it before I put it down on the cardstock, and then after I took the tape off and before I mounted it onto something else. Because I found that when I didn't do that, that someone would receive a card and the next time I was at their house or I saw them, the card would be pulling away from where the foam was at. And, you know, it was really disappointing because you spend so much time on a card and then you see it in a month or something like that later and it's coming apart. And it's a little sad, actually. And so then I started using the liquid adhesive with it. But then I received this tape from Crafter's Companion, and the first time I tried it, I was just blown away at how well it stuck. So if you have a chance to get that, that's really good tape. Okay, so next I've got the card base, and that's 5.5 inches square. And make sure you have it opening to the correct side. Just going to mount that on there. Okay, so now we're going to put the gems on. And again, I picked the yellow because it'll bring out the yellow in the petals and in the flower center. And I want to make sure that my gem is going to cover up all, if not most, of the dots that I put underneath it, whether it's the micro dots or the liquid adhesive. And last but not least is the cute little bow. Suzanne told me that you can apply this with tape. You know, I've never done that, but I'm gonna have to try that. In the meantime, I'm going to use my liquid adhesive again, and what I do is I put a whole glob of it. Oh no, dried. Gonna put the whole glob of it in the center and on. There we go. Center, and I put one on each loop towards the end, and then at the top part of my tail, so this way the bow lays exactly where I want it to. And there you go. Isn't it a sweet little card? It just makes me happy. And, you know, this is why I craft, because crafting makes me happy. And then when I create stuff like this, I know that I'm going to give it to someone and I hope that makes them happy. Well, it just makes everything even more awesome. So, I really hope you liked these cards. Oh, okay, Suzanne. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're thinking of putting glue there, Suzanne. Oh yeah, I guess I could do that too. I didn't know if it would, if the glue would change how it would look, like if it would react with the ink on the ribbon. Okay, great. So again, these are great little backgrounds that you can make. I find that once you make one, you ended up, like I said, making a whole bunch of them, which is awesome because then you can use the Quietfire Design stamps and you can create a card really quick to give to a friend or a loved one. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, well, thanks everyone for stopping by. Don't forget to sign up for the Suzanne Cannon Facebook group if you haven't done so yet. We'd love to see you there, and we'd love to see some of the projects that you make. Sign up for the newsletter if you haven't yet. Check out the YouTube site. You know, hop on over to Quietfire Creations blog or the digital blog and see the awesome projects there, and over at Elizabeth Craft Designs too. So next week again, Suzanne will be gone and I'll be back with another project. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to drop a line to me on Facebook. I'd be more than happy to get back to you. Yeah, and just have a wonderful week and have a happy, crafty day. Bye.